toujours là pour nous appuyer. Franchement, je suis très reconnaissant. Yeah, papa. That's right. Yeah. Fuerza caribeña.
Eso.
Barranquillera.
Cartagena.
Shakira, Shakira.
Entonces,
Yeah.
oh, wow. Okay.
Mhm,
That's good.
sí. Voy a ver si esto se nos termina aquí. Yes, yeah, exactly. So it's okay.
Are you checking the online participation?
Just to see whether
Just to
anybody has
see.
sent me a message, pero ya
Okay.
no, es muy poco, muy. Okay, creo que podemos empezar.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. My name is Gilbert Shang from Cameroon and Colombia, I should say. And it's a pleasure to have you this evening in Kultur House, Bayreuth. Welcome to the University of Bayreuth, to Africa Multiple Cluster of Excellence, and specifically to the research group Black Atlantic Revisited, where we seek to study narratives of transatlantic slavery and slave trade from the West African coast to the Americas. Specifically, we are focusing on the Colombian Caribbean coast and Salvador da Bahia. So today we began our day with a keynote by Dr. Javier Ortiz from the University of Cartagena, and we are continuing this time in poetry performance with Ashanti Dinah Orozco from the neighboring city of Barranquilla, Colombia. So it's a pleasure to have you accompany us for this poetic evening for 1.5 hours. We know that many people are following on us on YouTube, and it's our pleasure to really have them because during COVID we learned that we have several priorities, but to spare time and be with us for 1 hour 30 minutes, we are really grateful for that. So welcome, and keep your comments coming on YouTube. Even if we are not able to respond to the comments live, Ashanti will look at the comments later on when the YouTube videos are published and would, of course, respond. And of course, we are going to have we also have a live audience here, and please feel free at the end of the day to also have your questions. So we are going to have Ashanti Orozco with us performing her poetry. Who is Ashanti Orozco? Ashanti Orozco is a doctoral student at the University of Harvard in the Department of African and African American Studies with the primary field of Romance languages and literatures. She has a degree in education from the Universidad del Atlántico in Barranquilla, Colombia, and a master's degree in Hispanic literature from the Instituto Caro y Cuervo, Bogota, which is a very important institute as far as Afro Colombian studies are concerned, or Afro Latino studies generally are concerned. Her research has focused on investigating and analyzing literary works of Afro Latin American authors, mainly from the Caribbean, from the perspective of socio-criticism of literature, cultural studies, post-colonial, decolonial, and feminist studies. And they have also focused on investigating how language, ideology, and racism circulate in school textbooks to reveal strategies of power, manipulation, and reproduction of stereotypes and ethnic asymmetries. She's the author of a collection of poems from which she's going to present Las Semillas del Muntu, The Seeds of Muntu, published in 2019. And she's also won several awards. I would name just three. Benkos Bioho Award 2016. Benkos Bioho is a very emblematic and iconographic figure in the history of Colombia, but also beyond, as the founder of the Palenque de San Basilio, which is the first freed community in the Americas. And it's a very strong symbol in Colombian history, but also Afro-Latino history in general. She also won an award as the which is called the Afro Descendant Women Recognition Award in 2019 for her work both as a poet but also as someone who is very active in the public sphere, and also had the major mention as from the Ministry of Culture in Colombia. And Ministry of Culture is very key in Colombia because of the cultural, the cultural complexity of that country. So when you have the Ministry of Culture in Colombia, you basically can do a lot to promote the Afro-Colombian presence. So she's got this award, and I think given the nature of her work, many more awards are coming. When I see the potency of her poetry, we are aiming at many more awards coming, apart from your PhD, which you're going to defend, I'm sure, in the next few years. I know when PhD students hear about deadlines, they're always a bit, Yeah, but welcome, Ashanti, and it's wonderful having you here. But I must remind you that she was part of our workshop that's early this year in June. And she could only attend virtually because of reasons beyond her control. So we thought that maybe we could postpone her presentation, her performance. As you know, performance cannot be done virtually. So she participated in roundtables and panels, but then the performance was shifted to the time when she will be able to be with us physically for us to feel her presence. So thank you so much, Ashanti, and welcome.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm just feeling like I have emotional feelings to be here. It's my first time I'm coming in Europe in my whole life. So that's really huge because it's Germany, the road, the path, who invites me in this time of my life. I don't know my second life and my past. I don't know if I visited this place in my last past, talking about my spirits. But I'm feeling very well here. I'm feeling like being in a familiar environment, an atmosphere. It's getting colder, but I really don't feel the cold. Please don't be in panic. I feel warm and safe. And yeah, we are going to start. I'm going to read some points in English and in Spanish. I just said to my brother here that I don't read poetry in English. This is a translation edition that it's coming in the next semester. It's being published in the United States, but I have a good translation by Eduardo Bechara Navratilova, and he made a great work. I think very great work. And I'm going to read some poems in Spanish that I feel that I cannot read it in English because I don't feel the mood to really read it in English. There are some words that mention my spiritual background, and my connection with my Hispanic heritage, that I feel that it's better to do it in Spanish.
Exactly.
But you are invited, of course, to feel in your skin my words and the presence of your ancestors, because everybody has ancestors. So welcome here. Yeah.
Exactly.
Surrounded by our spirits.
Maybe before she goes ahead to start, I just want to say we are going to do it in sequences. So she will present 2 poems, and then for the first sequence, I will be the only one to dictate. I have the microphone and the moderation. I will ask her some few, just to trickle her and let her speak about her poetry, and then she will do the second sequence, and from there now, the audience can also come in with questions exactly and interact with her. And we also doing so because she would read some few poems in Spanish because we also have a very huge Spanish speaking audience online on YouTube following her.
Oh,
So
yeah,
so
yeah,
it would be very
yeah.
unjust for us to monopolize English simply because we are the ones who invited her. But we want to be as inclusive as possible. Entonces, a los seguidores de habla española, estamos muy contentos que estén allá siguiendo esta performance también en español. Y por favor, siéntese en casa. Estamos en la Universidad de Bayreuth y tenemos una invitada de una gran factura, una gran dama de poesía, en el nombre de Ashanti Orozco, hija de Barranquilla, pero también estudiando en la Universidad de Harvard.
And hija del Muntu.
Hija del Muntú, hija de
Adoro
África,
Muntu.
porque no siempre se acuerda de sus raíces, por eso. Pero también les queremos recordar que empezamos la jornada con una presentación, una ponencia del doctor Javier Ortiz Casiani de la Universidad de Cartagena y que está también con nosotros acá y es un gran gozo para nosotros, un honor tener a esas dos figuras de la cultura afrocolombiana acá con nosotros en Bayreuth. Entonces, estamos listos para escuchar a la poeta Ashanti Orozco Dinah.
Okay, let's start with 2 points in English. Astronomy body. I am an essentially cosmic being. All the elements of my organism were in the size of creation since geological age. Millions of years ago, it was hydrogen powder, floating like a thread of smoke, orbiting like an umbilical cord, spiraling like a dervish over the dark void of space. From the holy turbulence, the gases condensed into orbs and became starred and started to glow. Between atoms, I'm a miniature constellation. And my young body is still warm by the hands of Olodumare, beats with the noise that created life. I'm a vestige of millennial fire. I contain in my first cell particles that concentrate the sense of everything that vibrates and flows. Nebulae networks linger in my heart. I'm a dream equation. So when they ask me, what is the planetary system made of? I answer, of ourselves. Destination of the Muntu. First, Abiyami, the peacock, leans onto my window and says, fate is woven by the skein of time. We are related to the 7 elements. Heaven, our cot. Air, our soft. Water, our blood. Fire, our sap. Earth, our roots. Fauna, our veins. Flora, our dreams. And don't forget, Dinah, that we tie the voice of the heart to the constellations. Second, Aquaro, the quail, knocks at my door and tells me, we are part of the astrological plant, animal, and human family. And we are twinned with the volcanoes and the stones. We match our breath with the current of the birds and the wind. We breathe in every pore of the soul that the trees exhale. We intertwine their strength and their intuition in continuous movement, in continuous arrival and departure, in continuous reciprocal flow. And don't forget, Dinah, that we are not forged from the beginning of the circle. Third, in my kitchen, a gelée de dove chirps and tells me, and just like the cosmic womb, we carry within us filaments of planetary orbits, particle frequencies, and atomic energies. We are continent and content. We are cells, neurons, hormones. We are alchemy, medicine, and healing. We are infinite nature. We are passengers of the journey, the firmament that walls. And the consciousness of our body is divided by the horizon. That's why we express the day and the night, the moon and the sun, with their cycle and reflection. And don't forget, Dinah, our origin is terrestrial, but our destiny is heavenly.
Yes, so thanks so much, Ashanti, and interesting. And I have a series of questions, and I mean, some of which we have already touched upon in our initial interview. But one just came to me as you were reading, because I've actually had time to go through like a collection of poetry by a Colombian female poet, that which was published by the Ministry of Culture recently.
It was like 10 years
recently,
ago.
it's about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So, of course, in poetry, time is cosmic, so 10 years is no time. And most of the poets in that collection actually preoccupy themselves with mostly social issues, day to day. But in your poems, I see a tendency, of course, it's not exclusive, but I see a tendency to focus more on the cosmic, the planetary, kind of really ontological questions, planetarity, and there's something that is quite peculiar. Your poetry is about air, it's about water, it's about fire. What Greek, pre-Socratic philosophers call the Eleatian age of philosophy. What do these symbols mean to you that you are so much concerned with these atavistic images? Water, like fire, air.
I have mainly concerned and occupied about the way the astronomy, the cosmos, alienated with human being. And I have called in this like using like a kind of counterpoint with Hegel, a phenomenology of the spirits, una fenomenología de los espíritus, a way to produce an ontological and phenomenological way of thinking in the African vision. So this way is a kind of this political decision for me, and why not a social political decision in terms of select or choose any specific voices and words that I want to tell to my audience. And these are fire, water, because they are related with the ecological crossings of the slaves in the Atlantic, the Black Atlantic slave trade. Yeah. So I want to repositionate all these cosmos elements that we have lost, because sometimes we have lost the connection with Africa. And that's the way that I try to directly connect with my ancestors and the spirits.
Great. It goes right at the heart of my question. And then I will connect that with another question in terms of when you began to talk about your collection that has been translated from Spanish to English. But when you write, I also have another approach to translation in terms of poetry or any sort of creative writing in the Americas. Is it not also a type of translation in itself? because your poetry is concerned with also questions of origin, Africa. So are you not also doing a kind of ontological translation of wanting to, a translation which source, as Javier was telling us, there's not exact clarity, of the source culture. The target culture might be clearer, but the source culture is not clearer. So are you not also trying to translate also the culture, the religion, the mythology into your American space in some way?
Yeah, this is a diasporic counterpoint because I'm aware of the African vision and philosophy, but also as a diasporic woman who were born in Colombia, in the Afro-Colombian, sphere, and as a public, intellectual ones. I think there is necessary to use the tools of translate the cultural background and the African vision into the diaspora itself. And as a practitioner, as a Yoruba practitioner, as a priestess, I'm a daughter of Ogun, and Oya, Yansa, in Santeria tradition, I consider that we have recreated all the Yoruba wisdom in Latin America. I mean the Caribbean space. I took a class with a professor. I just mentioned to Felix, Professor Felix, whose name is Jacob Olupona, at Harvard University. And at the end of this class, the Professor Olupona said something that I cannot forget at all, because it's very important to maintain, to keep in mind. He said, the diaspora people in Cuba and in Brazil, they are the people who keep in mind and maintain the sources of Yoruba wisdom in the global society, because we use and create in an aesthetic movement some of the knowledges that in Yoruba itself have lost. There is interesting to see how we recreate all of the music, the ceremonies, the use of the drums in a creolicized and transcultural way. So this is a kind of transcultural and creolicized translation. Why not?
Actually, transatlantic translations,
Yeah.
to say. To use a term that is used by Julio Ortega, a Peruvian critic and a well-known writer. Thanks so much. So we will continue, and my autonomy and my dictatorship as moderator has expired. So the audience will be able to ask questions in the next sequence. So you present 2 poems, and then the audience will then be able to.
Okay.
I wipe my rights now.
I wanna.
Yeah, you do another sequence of 2.
Okay, I'm going to read the 2 seconds in Spanish.
Okay.
Yeah.
The audience will listen to in Spanish.
No worry. Okay.
Yes, we have a very bilingual, multilingual audience.
Okay, I loved it.
Yes.
La vida de los muertos. Ayer un tata en Ganga me dijo, los muertos nacen de las 4 estaciones con el enigma de la existencia. Nunca mueren, solo funden su rumor de aliento con la tierra. Cuando reencarnan son espejo líquido de nosotros mismos. Palpamos el pataquí de sus vidas. Cuando trabajan en el corazón de la manigua, se vuelven tejido de nidos, brazos de musgo y manglar sobre el mar de los inicios. Sus rostros se nos cincelan en las manos, untados de lodo, arcilla y estruendo. Cuando deambulan, se vuelven habitantes de las estrellas, pasajeros del aire. Esa es su forma de quedarse a vivir en el canto del ave. Vienen desde el ayer a contemplarnos. Como un coro de abejas, surcan la curvatura de la retina. Un misterio de luna orbitando en sus miradas nos descifra el pensamiento. Son los narradores invisibles de nuestros sueños. Murmuran en concierto de imágenes que se hacen idea y verbo. Nos trazan canales en el cuerpo, bosques de nostalgias, fragmentos sonoros donde cabe el peso de nuestra memoria. Son lluvias marcando el compás de los días. Si los escuchamos, sentimos una percusión galopar las colinas de nuestra lengua. La artillería de una fuerza en la médula del alma. Los ofrendamos con frutas y flores. De ellos es el pan recién hornado, el café de la tarde, el agua de azúcar al caer el día. Sílaba a sílaba, invocarlos con el bálsamo de los rezos, cantarles con la sangre de nuestros animales, hoguera de versos que alumbra sus ausencias. Soplamos ron y nos profetizan palabras liberadas del cepo y del látigo. Que a nuestros pies descienda la voz de los muertos, que nuestros dedos palpen el tambor de su tempestad, que bailen con nosotros al son de la melodía más antigua. Jícara de agua para mis muertos. This is a kind of jícara. I don't know how to translate. Wooden cup.
Yeah, wooden cup, yeah. Wooden cup, yeah.
Solo la memoria de la memoria congrega a los muertos. Me acompañan al filo del cielo con el calendario de las lluvias. Nunca estoy sola. De golpe están aquí y ahora entre mis sueños. Pensando, a veces mi corazón los escucha. Yo los convoco y un océano de luz emerge. Los siento vivos en mí. Avanzan, descienden. Viajan en marejadas por todos mis huesos. Adentro se levanta una legión. Sus rostros pintados hacen sortilegios en mi sangre. Dejan sus rastros de su aliento en mis sendas. Llevo su retoño bajo el jardín de mis ojos. Tengo en la lengua, en la punta de mi lengua, sus lamentos, su saudade. Late el robusto acento de sus pisadas, como caminar de hoja suelta, como semilla que rumorea en mis manos, como miel extasiada en la tempestad de mis pies. Aquí, en el altar de esta mesa, invoco la energía de sus nombres como tributo a la vida y a la muerte. Esta mañana agradeceré, honraré su estirpe, sembraré sus voces en jícaras de agua.
Wow. Thanks so much, Ashanti. And we'll take a pause now, then give the floor to our audience. Maybe they have some emotions. Yes, Prof. Felix. You need to use the mic so that you can feature in the online streaming.
Thank you, Moderator. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
And thank you, our eminent poets of this evening. It's so warm to be here, you know, listening to this embrace of poetry coming from across the Atlantic. Yeah. Listening to your poem, it really gives me a very happy feeling. But at the same time, there is a question that I cannot refrain from asking. I can see that your poetry deals a lot with ancestralidad, your ancestralidad africana that comes all the way with you. Now, le quisiera preguntar, maybe I should ask that directly to you in Spanish. La ancestralidad pensada solo se puede vivir a través de los muertos o tiene también una, 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 presentificada, 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 en tu día a día. que no sea siempre solo para los muertos. Eso es una parte.
Maybe you can also render it in English because of course, so you just so that
Okay.
because we are going to have the video registered so that we can have like fluid,
Okay.
multilingual.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, my question was on black ancestral roots, which she's carrying so happily. And I was asking her that does this black ancestrality limit itself to a relationship to the dead ancestors, or is there a place for the living ancestors in that particular configuration? Because it's a trap that I'm actually bringing, because in the relationship of Africa with Latin America, we have this va-et-vient that has to do with the past and the present. And most of the time, while they take us to the past, we are very eager to know their present. Thank you.
Great.
Oh, thank you. That's absolutely great.
Great
That's a
question.
very good question. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm thinking about this concept of Muntu. That's why my book is called Las Semillas del Muntú, the seed of Muntu. Muntu is an ontological and philosophy conception about the relationship with the human being with the animals, plants, and it includes all forms of life. And when I'm thinking about animals and the fauna and flora, I'm thinking about the communication, the spiritual communication, the presence of this spiritual tradition, because a bird can say everything. This is the manifestation of the universal being on the well-being, you know? And how can you translate the singing of the bird in your life? When you touch a tree, you know, you can feel encompassing many things in your blood. This is an ancestral communication with the ancestors, with the spirits, but also with the nature itself. The communication with the whole spirits is the spirits of the nature itself. I don't know if you are understanding what I'm saying, but this is a dialectic movement that Camus, Braithwaite, taught us in his book Arrivance. No? The way that the waves, the ocean, the river communicates ourselves, telling us many things. In the deep side of the ocean, there are so many life that can communicate with us. This is the way I understand this conceptual and ontological and philosophical definition of Muntu as a threshold of life, when it's death and life at the same time. You have this dialect, and this is life, passing through the death, and this is the death passing through the life.
Exactly. This is a very, present dialogue in your poetry: death and life, life through death, and also death through life. So it's quite interesting the way you combine this in your poetry. And just a week ago, I was moderating an online poetry festival, and from poets from Cameroon, and we had a slot echo poetry. But I just discovered that when I'm reading your poem, your poetry collection, I mean, there's no. I wouldn't say this is an echo poem and the other one is not an echo poem. It's some sort of intermeshed in a way that you find this echo poetic element in every poem that you write. So the connection between man and nature is so natural that one does not need to say this poem is echo poetic and the other one is not. It's so intermeshed from the very beginning. So that's quite interesting. I find. So maybe we move to the next sequence, and in English or
In
Spanish?
English,
Okay,
in
in English,
English.
and then yes,
Yeah, in
you still
English.
have the chance to ask questions or make comments.
Okay. Great great grandchildren of the Muntu, you will call me a cobio. What nests in the enclosure of our blood? It is a boomerang that returns to journey, a seed sown in the womb of our mothers, perhaps a wound crawling in the ladder of birth. Are they willows whence the next play a concert to infinity? You tell me, Ecovio, why do the great great grandchildren of the Muntu get drawn on the hands of invisible drummers? Why does a cry break in our pulse? Where does this dialect that enchants death come from? Is this cry always dim at the root of the past? Where does this breath of words come from? My father's river. Rafael Orozco Figueroa, in each flight summit and each minute path, your hand travels through the burning of my ways. Do you remember that book about Biko that we eagerly devoured? Now the wrinkles of time chisel the geometry. This geometry of your dreams of the skin of mirrors. Today, in the severity of the hours, a whole river of flies curls like a town of nostalgia in your eyes, and a spring of rain gathers in your gaze. You are standing here like an epic poem in the down of the pupils. In the heart of your voice beats a legacy of sweetness that dissipates my sadness. With your wings, you shelter the landscape of my childhood. And with the waves of your smile, you invite me to fly like a bird woman. With the sound of a tree burst in the chest, you made everything for me.
Thanks so much, Ashanti. And then we have, of course, a reaction from the audience. And maybe before someone asks a question, I also have this for you. Yes, I talked of how you combine the cosmic and the day-to-day, and in very few poems, then you make reference to specific persons, figures in your life. Raphael.
Orozco Figueroa, my father.
Exactly. whom I had the opportunity to meet, but then circumstances did not permit us to meet in Barranquilla. Who is a historian, I must say.
Yeah.
What I noticed also that family is actually very important. Of course, on the continent, but more so even in the diaspora, that the family can make or break.
Definitely.
Yeah, why is family education so crucial? Of course, in the African diaspora, not only in Colombia, but the family nucleus is quite key in determining your trajectory, either as a musician, as a poet, as an academic. Family is so crucial in the African diaspora. Why, in your case, maybe you can tell us a bit more.
Yeah, family has been crossed my life in different ways. I was educated by two amazing person. My mother and my father belongs to a low class, and we were poor. I grew up as a poor black child, when I was younger, very younger. But I grew up, with dignity. With dignity, And I always saw my father reading different books, historical books, and he was always proud of being black. And he told us about slavery and so many things. And I learned how to dignify my life in terms of doing the best thing I could do, like for example studying at the university, and even going to one of the most recognized university. Maybe could be in the global the global sphere which is Harvard University. I am the only one who could do it. So I don't have many people in my family that could study at the university. So this is so important for me, but the ethical, ethical view of of well-being, but healing others is something that I learned to my family.
Great. Now, moving from your biological father to your poetic fathers, I noticed that you also have a very strong working relationship in terms of poetry with Julio Romero. Pedro Romero, who is named also after a very important figure that Javier talked about, the historical Romero, who played a role also in the in the liberation. So there's of course
the past and the present.
Yes, the present and the past, the historical and the Pedro that we know,
who's still alive,
who's still alive and strong
in Gethsemane.
in Gethsemane, he's a very notable poetic figure in Cartagena and Gethsemane in particular. And so when you present, especially when you present, I see a lot of Pedro's presence also in your way of presentation. And then in your writing, I also see a lot about, what I can connect with the poetry of Jorge Ortel, who wrote Tambores en la Noche, especially when you talk about dancing to, get drunk in the hands of invisible drummers. I mean, this is quite interesting, and there are very similar figures in the poetry of Artel, because, of course, his poetry is about drums. And this also links me towards something which Edward Said, the famous post-colonial critic and Palestinian author and human rights activist and public intellectual, how he defines identity. The trajectory that does not leave us with a clear inventory of who we are. Dancing to the tunes of invisible drums. Could those drums maybe be coming from across the Atlantic? But then it really defines your being in the Americas. So, and you talk about Edward Kama Broadwhite and Derek Walker. There's always this element of something invisible, but that has such a huge grip on you in the present. It could be sound, it could be an image, it could be a voice. Yeah, so that for me is quite it depicts very much the transatlantic identity, that doesn't leave you with a clear inventory. Javier talks about lack of clarity, but there's an affect. The affect is there, even though you don't have like a clear scientific knowledge of where you're coming from, but when you encounter someone, you actually feel the affect. So for me, it's quite interesting to have in the poetry.
I first of all would like to say that I have three male figures in my life. I mean, elder figures, male elder figures. The first one is my father, Rafael Orozco Figueroa. The second is Pedro Blas Julio Romero, which is my literary father. And the third is Ogun as my Orisha, my male Orisha. So I'm devoted of those people.
Spiritual, family and poetic figure.
But also there are any others like Jorge Artel drummer con tambores en la
Tambos
noche,
en la
no?
noche.
Drums of night.
We talked about Candelario
Candelario
Beso.
Beso, Manuel Zapato Olivella.
Olivella.
We call him in Colombia as the mayor Ecobio. Ecobio means brother, elder brother, someone who has the knowledge. Yeah, compared with the rest is the, the wisdom, the wisdom people, the wisdom person who has the knowledge to guide. Yeah. So Ecobio is a Calabar, it's a Calabar word, based. Yeah. And I think I took on then these images, the root metaphor of waves, ocean, rivers, the move of the plants, the herbs, the leaves, the wind. All this belongs to the nature of movements, in the sense that I explained into myself that I was born in the Colombian Caribbean, so everything has to do with movement, with rhythm. Everything around us is about the drum. The drum is everything. So I can feel the drum also in the movement of the leaves, in the movement of the birds. So the drum is an instrument, but the bird is an instrument of the drum.
Okay. Wow, that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
The way you and when you this also reminds me of William Blake. When you actually cite Blake in one of your So why are you hiding your European father?
I'm sorry.
Okay. Because Blake is also very present, and of course, as an Afro-American poet, he also tapped from all the rich cultural literary traditions.
Maybe I am in love and in hate with Hegel.
Okay. Thank you so much. Maybe Thierry has a question. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ashanti, for this wonderful readings. When reading, since we are talking about influence and the fathers and so on, listening to you reading in English also, in a kind of a translingual transformation of your voice and the way you present it, it reminds me of Martin Luther King, actually. I don't know what is the influence of Martin Luther King in your in your poetry or in the way you approach your spirituality, because him as well as a pastor and a spiritual leader, I see that energy as well of the phenomenology of the spiritual in this push, or let's say in this movement towards liberation and renaissance of the black body. Yeah.
Wow, great question. I love this question. Yeah, I must say Martin Luther King is one of the greatest figures of freedom, black liberation, the whole world. But this is a huge, enormous and tremendous figure in American movement, social black movement, but also in Latin America. So I grew up with Martin Luther King references in my whole life, reading his famous "I Have a Dream." So I think this kind of movement of his voice made me feel like we have great connections. Instead of I speak Spanish, but when I first got in touch with Martin Luther King, I felt that we have many things in common. So when I was a child, I didn't understand what he said. Never. Yeah. But I felt that he told me, he was talking about something that we have in common, something that I felt that is about me. I don't know why. This spiritual connection, a kind of network that you can explain, invisible network. We were talking, we were just talking in earlier minutes, ago, and that's why I feel the rhythm. I use the rhythm that I learned to Martin Luther King. Now, this is one of the references in my life. I definitely love Martin Luther King and the beloved community, because African people are beloved community in some ways around the world. The solidarity and the way his discourses through hundreds of people means a gospel of life. Yeah, the gospel of the words.
Thank you so much, Ashanti. Any last question before she moves to the next sequence? Or if not, then she moves to the next sequence in Spanish or in English?
In Spanish, I think. So yeah, can be in Spanish. Yeah. Let me try to find out. Okay. Oh, Misa Negra. Un juramento bantú se borda en los labios del Tatenganga. En medio de la lluvia dirige el ritual de sacrificio de 3 gallos. Cuando la danza de un relámpago troza el aire y se prolonga, riega la memoria con la resina de la sangre. A lo lejos, un tambor de selva acaricia el vuelo de un búho. En esta misa negra pronunciamos los nombres de todos nuestros muertos. Descienden las escaleras del cielo hacia el árbol gigante donde hace siglos sembraron sus ombligos. Con las oraciones, sus voces se van caminando hacia un caldero de barro donde se cuece la sal de la creación. Ahí respiran las aldeas y los reinos africanos arropados por su colmena interior. Ahí están las palabras sagradas de Tituba durante la quema de brujas. Ahí reposa el canto de un cimarrón fusilado con el fuego de una escopeta. Ahí también residen los huesos de aquel fugitivo colgado en lo alto del horcón. Ceremonia muertera. Salam aleikum. Malaikum salam. This is a salutation that we used in Palo Monte, and it's quite interesting because we use a Muslim salutation in Palo Mayombe, which is one of the Afro-Atlantic religion in Afro-Cuban world. And it's Congo tradition. It's not Yoruba tradition, it's Congo tradition. We used to salutate ancestors, spirits, Salam aleikum, and they answer, Malaikum salam. ¿Somos o no somos? Somos. 3 personas distintas, un solo Dios verdadero. Yeah. So here we have also the Congo tradition. Yo presiento una sacerdotisa armada en zarabanda. Me adentro en su boscosa lluvia donde mora la malanga perfumada. Va como iguana aleteando por el silencio, como bruja convocada por el canto. Yo presiento una sacerdotisa armada en zarabanda. Oleadas de tambores copulan en su ombligo. Su baile atiza el festín mayor en los arrecifes de la aldea. La escucho vociferar aquel canto en la tumbadora. Zarabanda, a ti te llamo. Zarabanda, a ti te ruego. Zarabanda, tú eres el ojo. Sarabanda, tú son malembe. Sarabanda, tú abres el camino. Sarabanda, tú son mayimbe. Yo presiento una sacerdotisa armada en Sarabanda. Alba negra, candela por dentro. Sombra de asadón y machete, estranguladora de gallos. A oscuras lleva puesta la máscara ritual para oficiar la muerte. Ninguna agonía la hará detener su sangre de reptil bajo el fogón de la tierra. Yo presiento una sacerdotisa armada en Sarabanda. La guardo en mis plegarias, la enciendo verso a verso, la llevo en mis gemidos. ¡Ay, anochecer del alma mía!
Something particular about the Caribbean coast, this powerful verb that you find in the poetry, also in the novels. So when you read, I also feel Garcia Marquez reading his memoirs, like that potency in the voice is something that is purely Caribbean, I think. You made a comment about you live currently in the U.S.
Yeah.
And you made a comment about the solidarity with Africa, the diaspora. But today we were talking about the kind of the complexity of that solidarity, which means that it's not always like spontaneous fraternity. It could be, but then there's always the fact that the diaspora is not also homogeneous. It has passed through different experiences that have defined even the way the diaspora relates with itself, you know, within the diaspora. And so I would like to know you as an Afro-Latina encountering the U.S. society. How is the experience and at a social level, but also how does it, echo in your writing? Of course, I know that North American authors, you know, have really had a huge influence on Latin American authors too, and maybe vice versa. We always look at the North side, but we don't look at the South North too. So how does that, the fact that the Black community in the northern part of North America has gone through a different experience, and is it not also a kind of? Do you also feel an order, being ordered, being considered to be an order in North America as a Black, Afro-Colombian?
Yeah, of course. I definitely felt when
even
I
within
was,
within the Black community. How is that experience?
Within the Black community in South, Afro-American community, you have a kind of feeling that you are different because you speak Spanish or Portuguese, depending on you are coming from in the Latin America geographical area. And then you come to the U.S., where there is a hegemony of the English language, but also in my department of African and African American Studies, look at the name African and African American Studies, where Afro-Latinos people are there.
Is the African American reference because I know in Spanish it's always very controversial to say America referring to the U.S.
To the U.S.
So is the African
in
American
this case African America mostly
North America?
Yeah. And the fields are related with African, but also the hegemony is all about African American people as the only ones who has fighting, against racism, racial discrimination, as Afro-Latin American people doesn't exist in some way, And I felt like, whoa, what about Afro-Colombian people? And not only everybody knows about Afro-Colombian people. They used to mention in their studies Afro-Brazilian because of the candomblé. And Brazil is a huge subcontinent, They used to mention the African studies, in the U.S., Jamaica, because of the reggae, Bob Marley, etc., etc. they used to mention Haiti, but I could lie. The mention of Haiti were more than they used to do it, because Haitian Revolution was the first, the huge revolution in the whole world, compared with the French Revolution. Yeah, we have a huge rebellion of black people and Maroonage philosophy, and making things better for black people in the future. And the other mentioned sometimes Trinidad and Tobago, because the Shango cult, and Cuba, of course, because of the Santeria, and because of the others, and the political, the social, the revolutionary, sphere there. And the rest of us doesn't exist in this way. So we insist in our department that Afro-Latinx studies needs to be relocated, reevaluated, rewriting, yeah. And of course, this is the way we insist every day in our lives to repositionate that. Please.
Exactly.
Don't treat us as a non-being, as a non-black being people in the African studies.
Yeah, Afro-diasporic landscape.
Yeah, and personally, I felt welcome with some of people, African people and Afro-American people there. And I live in Worcester, which is the second largest, we have the second largest population in Massachusetts. And we have their diversity of people from Ghana, many of them, Cameroon, yeah. But people from the Arabian world, and people from different parts of the Latin America. I mean, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and so on. And you feel, you feel that people encompassing the idea of diversity in a good way. You can participate there. Yeah, definitely. I feel that there is a lack of positionality around the Afro-Latin studies. But at the same time, I think we are making possible, with our works. I think we have to insist that they recognize one of our major figures, our political, representation, Manuel Zapato Olivella. Yeah, we insist, please read this book, Chango el Gran Putas. Yes. This is our Bible. Yeah. You have to read it, not only roots.
And to also mention that Manuel Zapata Olivella was also a great influence on Garcia Marquez, and not only did he also guide him in as a journalist, because they were all journalists at some point in Cartagena, but also he also influenced Garcia Marquez in so many ways. Oh yeah,
and something that I forgot is the relationship between the Harlem Renaissance writers in New York, in Harlem, and some writers, some Afro-Latin American writers, as Manuel Zapata Olivella, Jorge Artel, with Langston Hughes, with Quentin Colley. Yeah.
Langston Hughes. Exactly. So it's quite interesting. I mean, Langston Hughes was a good friend of Jorge Artel also, and a number
I was a friend of Nicolas Guillen. Yeah, Nicolas Guillen from Cuba. So and Luis Pales Matos from Puerto Rico.
Exactly. Yeah. So we are here also.
We have here like a black international sphere of black people in the Americas, because the only America is not the U.S. Yeah, and it's quite interesting to see. The letters they intertwined through the years.
And this increasing recognition is not only in literature, it's also in music, it's also in politics. We have Susana Baca in Peru. And I think the black diaspora also in Latin America is coming together in a way that there's much more communication, now between the black diaspora in Colombia and Brazil. There are projects, joint projects between the black diaspora in Colombia and Peru and in Bolivia. I mean, people might not even know that there's a huge, of course, relatively smaller, but it's significant also in Colombia, in Bolivia in particular. And just some few days ago, Jorge Medina Barra, the first parliamentarian of African origin in Bolivia, passed away. So this is also a chance to really condole with the Afro-Bolivian community. Yes, these are pioneers and icebreakers also in countries where people in most African countries might not imagine that Bolivia also has a sizable black diaspora. Professor Felix was telling us about his research in Venezuela also. You would not imagine that there's a sizable, and in Paraguay, Uruguay, you have communities and doing great work under difficult conditions, but resilience and going on. So thank you so much. And I think we still have
what time do we have?
We still have chance for a last sequence of poems. Then before we then ask the question, we then give the floor to the audience. And
what time do we have?
We have
around
20 minutes left.
15.
20 minutes.
20 minutes. Okay. Okay. Let me try to figure
Just
out.
2 quick poems and then last comment from the public. And
Okay. Symphony of ancestors, voices, screens, songs, an orchestra of seagulls that resounds from within, a symphony of the sunsets of the soul, cheapest memory. They are dressed in ebony and ivory, and with their watery smiles, and with their cosmic serpent steps, they travel through the region of dreams. In the writing of our bodies, the ancestors with their squid ink draw trees on our pupils, mangroves of nostalgia, ancient cartographies. The ancestors lick our swells of blood, recall our wounds, they hide among the dry leaves. Impatiently, they peek out with the eye of their tongues. They row along the banks with their saber oars. They braid the skeins of time.
Super.
Rogative. Today a prayer occupies my thought, shakes my eyes, and draws an omen from the gods. Where are my ancestors? The question becomes immense, like the memory of wars, when they recover the body of myths. I look for answers in the ages of the past, on the shores of light, in the substance of the dream, in the trails of silence. I seek the masters of the hidden, in the scars of time, in the screens of the karimba, in the volcanoes between my hands, my hands, my hands.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ashanti. I don't know if there's a last round of questions from the audience or comments, and then we will close the show for the evening. Anybody wants to say something? Make any comment? Otherwise, I will then ask a very last brief question.
And the last point?
The last.
The two last.
Okay.
In Spanish.
In Spanish, yes,
yeah.
because we want to be to be also
bilingual.
Yeah,
always.
bilingual. So I will ask. I think you should do the poems first, and then I ask the question just for the end. Yes, do the poems in Spanish first.
First?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you want to?
Yeah, you do the poems, and then I ask the last question. Just trigger.
Oh, that's interesting because I would like to finish with this. I consider this is part of the ceremony we used to do on Muntu, una Muntu la oye, Muntu ile, chola wana, chola pongo, chola no pequeño, moyu boya locha, moyu boya bona, kinka mache, kamariku, kamamu, kamaisu, kamamu, kamayare, lona que vos fique guarda, porque este es un saludo para el guau. Salutation.
Okay.
Oh, thank you so much. My reverence to Elegua, guardián de mi sendero. Los inquisidores dicen que un diablo habita la geometría de mi piel. Les incomodan mis versos de rompezaragüey directo a las venas. Voy trastocando la sintaxis colonial. El mito me enseña a conjurar la herejía con el cacareo de los tambores. Canto este ritual, este largo poema de alabanza en los patios del alma. Mientras los pájaros succionan la madrugada, le ofrendo golosinas y aceite de palma. Le voy lloviznando ron al guardián de mis senderos. Con el fulgor de las velas brota mi rezo de agua fresca. Yo te invoco orilla, protector de los sin voz, llave de los pactos, vigilante de la entrada. En cada punto de cruce pronuncio tu nombre. A esta morada revestido de plumas rojas, bajas por una ranura del cosmos con tu máscara de araña. Veo como las nubes se apartan al verte pasar. Un olor a manteca de corojo se desgrana del monte. Te veo galopar como una serpiente entre el follaje del maní. Comienza la ceremonia del tabaco y te ofrezco el sacrificio de la palabra. Con la corriente de mi lengua hablo al oído de los caracoles. ¡Ah! Pones tu H de risa en los labios de los niños. Siento cómo se ensancha tu aliento de raíces. Por fin estás derramando tu perfume sobre mí. Padre, viajero sin edad, imploro tu mirada sea tibia conmigo. Dibújame un sendero en la ribera madura del tiempo. And I just wanted to finish with this other poem dedicated to Yemaya. Yemaya. Yemaya is the mother of the diaspora itself, I think. We crossed the ocean because of Yemaya. Yemaya is death and life, I mean. It's difficult to say because we salutate Yemaya and we greet Yemaya because we are in life. But we felt like sadness, you know, because all our ancestors who crossed the Atlantic Ocean suffered in some way that is difficult to reproduce in this space. So Yemaya, you know how we feel. Negra señora del mar y del canto, un destello de algas y corales, acaricia tus senos y acuna la luz inundada que me habita. Alzas el manto de las redes y sumerges mi desnudez de sal en cascadas de placer. Abres tus fauces en un manantial de lechos y adivino el festín de tus olas. Yemaya hace su Yemaya. Yemaya hace su Yemaya. Yemaya olodo Yemaya. Yemaya olodo Yemaya. Me seduces con tu saya en espiral. Escucho cómo el bronquido ronco de tu garganta me aclama que somos una. Desde hace siglos mi cuerpo se funde con el vértigo de tus aguas. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I felt like joining you in the singing, but because I have cold, I didn't want to spoil this beautiful way of singing. So, so wonderful. And yeah, we are blessed to have you here, and I hope everyone has enjoyed the evening. And yes,
I hope so.
So please, a last applause for Ashanti. It's our pleasure in the African Multiple Cluster of Excellence, but particularly in the Black Atlantic Revisited project, to welcome you here from the Caribbean, from the US. It's such a pleasure to have exchange with you about your works, about your feelings, and also about your project. So I hope this is the beginning. We're going to have much more to do together. And you are still writing a lot, so yes. Hopefully you'll be back. You'll be back to Bayreuth anytime soon.
Oh, thank you so much.
And Javier also is with us, and we always say, when you come to Bayreuth, you will always come back.
Oh,
you will always come back. Yes,
thank
something
so
will
much.
always bring you back to Bayreuth.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot, and have a great evening. Muy bien. Good.